Hi, good morning. My name is Lorraine Jacobs. Mark Miller and I are co-chair of the Sunday Morning Forums, and we thank you for supporting our Sunday Forums. So great that you're here. For over 50 years at First Unitarian Society Milwaukee, the Sunday Forum Lecture Series has showcased speakers. Forums are 1 hour in length and provide a presentation followed by questions. Scheduling and hosting these weekly programs is accomplished by volunteers. The presenters do not receive honoraria. The content of each forum may not always align with the viewpoint of First Unitarian Society Milwaukee. They are meant to offer topics which can be pursued further independently. Before we begin today, I'd like to remind you that next Sunday, March 27th at 10 a.m., our topic will be Milwaukee County Aging and Disability Services. Michelle Allison, the outreach coordinator, will be presenting, and she'll offer an overview of the services and goals of this newly formed office in the county. And today, though, we welcome Marcelia Nicholson, the county board chairwoman, and she will be introduced by Bruce Wiggins. Just a note that Chairwoman Nicholson will provide a brief intro and review of county issues, and will then open the time for questions and conversation. Okay, pardon me.
Good morning, all. There we go. I can speak better. This is another in a series that we are holding at our forum of a new generation of African-American political leaders in our community. We are glad to welcome Marcelia Nicholson, the chair of the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors. I can attest to Ms. Nicholson's commitment to equity through the work that we have shared on the Milwaukee County Task Force on Climate and Equity, which she co-chaired with Alderman Nick Kovac up until recently. And Chairwoman Nicholson has grown up in Milwaukee and has graduated from UWM, so she has deep roots in our community. And rather than going through a long bio at this point, I'll just welcome her and say we're glad to have you and look forward to your comments this morning. Thank you.
Bruce, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, for thinking of me. It's such an honor to be here today. Thank you so much, First Unitarian Society. I'm really excited to share the work we've been doing at Milwaukee County this term in coordination with the county executive, David Crowley. Since you didn't get into the long bio, that's perfectly fine. I would love to just introduce myself to the listeners here. Hello, happy Sunday. So my name is Marcelia Nicholson, and as stated, I chair the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors. I was elected in 2016. Before being elected, I was actually a public school teacher. Just a little bit about my background. I grew up in the 53206 zip code, which is a poor zip code in the state of Wisconsin. Very challenging childhood I had, but very hardworking parents. Really poured a lot of, great, I think, morals and values into me and my brothers, one being having a hard work ethic, but also the value of education. And so I became the first person in my family to go to college. And because of that love for education, I actually became a public school teacher. It was through my work as a public school teacher at Milwaukee Public Schools. I was teaching 4th grade that I realized our community still had so many challenges, even more than I had growing up. So I got involved. I started asking questions, why is my classroom so, underfunded? Why do I have so many students and no support teacher? Why am I spending my own, small paycheck to buy supplies and so on? And when I learned about policy and policymakers, I got more engaged and then eventually recruited to run for the county board in 2016. I was elected to chair in 2020. And despite the challenges it's been during the pandemic, it has been incredible to work with passionate county board members and also our new county executive, David Crowley. So I'll leave it there, and then I'll jump into our presentation today, which is working toward a more equitable and sustainable Milwaukee County. So again, thank you for having me. And I am also going to be available for questions. So as I go through this presentation, if you do have questions, just hold them to the end, and then we will get those answered for you. Okay, so I'll jump right in. Okay, so first, let's talk about Milwaukee County government at a glance. So it's whether you ride the bus, visit our parks, or receive critical services, Milwaukee County government impacts our daily lives. Just to give you a short, in-depth view of what it is that we do, we oversee the airport. That includes concessionaires at the airport. Parks and recreation, so that's your neighborhood parks and the programming that are inside of those. Our Milwaukee County transit system. We also oversee youth and family services, public safety, such as the sheriff's department and the district attorney, housing and rent assistance, combined court services, behavioral health, aging and disability services, and then the zoo and cultural amenities such as our domes and our public museums, such as the Art Museum and the Milwaukee Public Museum. So just to just give you an overview of what we've been working on, in 2019, I sponsored legislation that made Milwaukee County the first in the nation to declare racism a public health crisis. I did that in coordination with former county executive Chris Abley, and various members of the county board. And since then, hundreds of jurisdictions across the nation have followed suit. The following year, in 2020, we adopted an ordinance that, among other things, committed the county to a vision of becoming the healthiest county in Wisconsin by achieving racial equity. Right now, we rank 71 out of 72 counties. The vision is being pushed forward through a framework which consists of 3 components, and I'll dig into those 3 components very shortly. That is to create intentional inclusion, to bridge the gap, and to invest. So just a brief overview of our 3 pillars. So first being creating intentional inclusion. We want to make sure that we reflect the full diversity. Hello, if you're just joining, please go ahead and mute for us. We want to reflect the full diversity of Milwaukee County at every level of government. So that's with the hires we make, not only as our department leaders, but the staff that connect with our residents day to day. We want to make sure to create and nurture an inclusive culture across Milwaukee County. We've done these through representation, such as making Juneteenth a major holiday. And we want to make sure that we increase the number of Milwaukee County contracts that are awarded to minority and women-owned businesses, and so proud to state that we've been exceeding our goals in that regard. Our second pillar, bridging the gap, means we want to determine what, where, and how we deliver services based on the resolution of health disparities. We know that we have unique challenges in Milwaukee County, which means we have a unique constituency. And we want to make sure that we're meeting those unique needs as well. We want to break down silos across Milwaukee County government to maximize access and quality of services offered. If many of you have been paying attention, you know that Milwaukee County in the past has been riddled with lots of conflict, but we've been known now to have unprecedented collaboration, not only with the board and admin, but across departments as well. And we're also applying a racial equity lens to all decisions, which I'll dig into a little deeper when we go through our budget. And then our third pillar, investing in equity, we want to invest upstream. So we want to address the root causes of health disparities. We want to enhance our fiscal health and sustainability by seeking creative solutions to raising revenue. And then we want to dismantle barriers to diverse and inclusive communities. We really want Milwaukee County government to feel comfortable and accessible to our residents. And there is a picture of the first signing of the Declaration of Racism as a Public Health Crisis. And as you see, it was a very wide effort of many folks, not only myself, the county executive and board members, but also department leaders, community organizational leaders, and community members who really had a stake in this fight. So just to go into our budget basics. So our annual budget totals approximately 1.28 billion, but it's about so much more numbers. As you know, your budget is basically your value statement. So our budget determines the investment we make in our community, the services we provide for some of our most vulnerable citizens, and the maintenance projects needed to support public amenities like our parks, our roads, among other things. Now, unlike cities or municipalities, counties are arms of the state of Wisconsin. So that means that we are mandated by the state and state laws we were mandated to provide services that the state chooses to mandate us to. And state laws restrict our ability to raise revenue for local priorities. So even though we are mandated by the state to provide some services, we're not always funded by the state to provide those services. And then beyond that, we take on some of our own local priorities, such as parks and the transit system. Now, each year by October 1st, so this coming October 1st, the county executive presents his recommended budget for the following year. The county board, we have roughly 6 weeks to review, amend, and then adopt that budget. So talking about budgeting through a racial equity lens, we really have enshrined our values in our budgeting process by empowering our leadership to view all decisions through a racial equity lens. This has never been done before. So we have started using the racial equity budgeting tool in 2020. We have taken it back to the drawing board and strengthened it based on the first round of submissions. And what this budgeting tool does is it lets the policymakers and the public understand who is affected by specific investments and or cuts within the county budget. So the racial equity budget tool, which we have now shared not only throughout the state, but with other national partners, is that it makes intentional connections between the strategic plan and the budget. It makes sure that we are using those key guiding principles for the important decisions regarding investments or disinvestments. So we want to make sure that when we're investing in areas that we're not investing in areas that already have access to resources or have already been invested heavily in. And when we're making disinvestments, we want to make sure that we're not disinvesting in areas that have already been riddled with those same disinvestments. And then we want to initiate conversations on topics related to the 3-year strategic objective, so among department leaders and employees. The strategic plan is the first plan we've created in 20 years. So this is an important part of the work. And then we make sure to provide baseline data on the efforts to inform enterprise-wide decisions. The racial equity budget tool is used across departments, including the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors. As chairperson, I basically run the day-to-day operations of the board as a whole. So I fill one of these out as well. And we submit these to the county executive. We present these at Finance Committee, and they're also uploaded to our Milwaukee County website for the public to not only hear, but see as well. And here is just a brief snapshot. The racial equity budget tool is several more pages than this, but you can see this is just an example of what every department leader has to submit with their request for the recommended budget. And they ask questions related to diversity and inclusion, etc. So for instance, what activities are you doing to attract and retain a diverse and inclusive workforce? Or how do you use professional development and advancement opportunities to advance equity? And then further down, you'll get into questions such as, if you're proposing cuts, how do these cuts affect communities of color, and so on. Here is just 2 images of myself as chair and our county executive, David Crowley, signing our first 2021 budget. To the left, you can see we're masked because it's a pandemic. And in 2022, the budget still masked because of the pandemic, but it's been an honor to work side by side, making sure that we're advancing priorities that our community cares about and in a way that keeps racial equity at the center. So our terms, 2020 to 2022, we're all entering into a new term. This is your reminder to go vote in April 5th. So we will hold our final board meeting of this term on Thursday, March 24th. And just to look back on some of the things I am personally proud of, some of the proposals I've advanced this term include creating the audit committee and the health equity, human needs, and strategic planning committee. These help ensure that current and future programs align with our vision of becoming the healthiest county in the state of Wisconsin by achieving racial equity. A resolution establishing Juneteenth as a May county holiday. A resolution that commits Milwaukee County to becoming carbon neutral by 2050. We've actually created a table of folks such as our sustainability director, our parks department, facilities, and so on, who are working together to create a strategic plan to make sure we can not only meet that goal, but exceed that goal. We also introduced a resolution that furthered our commitment to advancing climate change solutions by joining the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition. We advanced a proposal to phase out single-use plastics and other non-biodegradable products. We have a plan to bring roller skating to Red Arrow Park. A resolution creating paid internships with the county board. This was, for me, a passion project because county board internships were previously unpaid. As someone that grew up in the poor zip code in the state, I would not have been able to take an unpaid internship because I had to work to help my parents pay the bills. I know this reality for so many others, and because we want a diverse workforce, we want to make sure that that we make work accessible for folks that haven't always had those opportunities. We also advanced a resolution encouraging the establishment and funding of a mental health treatment court and supporting state legislation to expand treatment alternatives and diversion programs. I want to thank Governor Tony Evers, who just announced a very generous funding opportunity for Milwaukee County to fund our mental health treatment courts. We had a budget amendment to add more than $1.6 million to the Parks Department budget to address mission critical needs in the park system. That was co-authored by our finance chair, Jason Haas, and myself. And our parks are, really jewels of our county. And though we have many challenges fiscally that I'll dig into a little bit later in this presentation, it's very important to us that we continue to invest where and when we can. I also am proud to have authored the resolution establishing the American Rescue Plan Task Force, that's the Arpa task force, to review and recommend how to allocate money received from Arpa. Milwaukee County received around $180 million from the federal government. And because, when we receive funds, folks love to, provide where their priorities, where they want to see those dollars spent. We really wanted to create a process that made sense. Something that made sure that we were making very intentional and strategic decisions and keeping an eye, again, on that racial equity lens. I'm also proud to have helped foster a collaborative and positive environment with our county executive, our department leaders, amongst our county board of supervisors and across governmental jurisdictions, including the 18 other municipalities, including the city of Milwaukee, and then the state of Wisconsin as well. I wish that picture was not as blurry as it is, but you can see right now the board members for the 2022 term. We will be losing some members, however, gaining some new ones, and I've just been so honored to work with this body of supervisors. Now that this position is part-time, not in hours, but in pay and salary, or in salary and benefits. This is just an incredibly passionate and committed group of individuals, and it's been an honor to work with them in my first term as chairwoman. Let me get this little error message here out the way. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about our ARPA task force. So this was created with intentional focus. So again, we received around $183 million, and the task force promotes a more thorough review of allocations and greater engagement with community stakeholders. So the pandemic has had a disparate impact on people of color, we know that. Milwaukee County was the first in the nation. Again, we're leading on so many things. We were the first in the nation to make COVID data related to, deaths and so on, broken down by racial demographics. So knowing that that pandemic had a disparate impact on people of color, we wanted to expand our relief efforts and vaccine distribution. And we wanted to help rectify that through an equitable distribution of our federal funding. So the ARPA task force is made up of the county board chairperson or designee. So my designee is Supervisor Sean Rowland, who also chairs economic and community development. Our county executive or designee, who is Ricardo Diaz. He's the former president of the United Community Center. Our chairperson, the Committee on Finance, that is now Supervisor Jason Haas. However, he will be leaving for this upcoming term, so that person will be decided once we have elected a new chairperson and that new Committee on Finance chairperson is appointed. We also have our Director, Department of Administrative Services, our Comptroller, and our Director, Office on African American Affairs. And this was intentional because we wanted to make sure that it was a diverse table full of experts and stakeholders who can help guide and recommend as we make decisions. And this is just the ARPA Rescue Plan Act Task Force at work. So you have now a new hybrid model that I'm so proud to have helped work on in coordination with the county clerk in our technology offices. And so you'll see one of our chairperson is in person, while another chairperson is virtual online. And then you can see our county executive and our director of parks, Guy Smith, show up to speak about some recommended proposals. And we will be going hybrid next term. And we are outfitting our board offices, hopefully, if this resolution is adopted, on March 24th, to create to make our boardrooms hybrid as well, so that we can bring in our public again. And then just to continue, this is where the money has been allocated. So we are being, again, very deliberate with these resources. It was very important to us that we didn't just go and spend all $183 million in one go. We have a lot of challenges that are down the line that we haven't even foreseen yet. So we want to be very intentional. That being said, we have allocated more than 50 million of those ARPA funds. So 30 million has been set aside to invest in the Marsha P. Cox Human Services Center. That does sound like a large number. However, plans are in place or being put in place. And it really is a place where community members go to access resources that help them live healthy lives. So that is an important allocation of dollars. We allocated 10 million to execute a countywide digital transformation. So we really just want to, update our tech tools and make sure that we have systems in place that are easy and accessible. We allocated $4 million for vaccine incentive pay for correctional officers, $2.7 million for a right to counsel pilot program for 2021-2022. Shout out to Supervisor Ryan Clancy for introducing that proposal. We allocated $2.5 million for COVID-19 emergency needs, $1.5 million for flexible housing subsidies for 2021. The pandemic really did hurt folks, not only economically, but in terms of housing and so on. And then $500,000 for a capital program management office for ARPA funding. So as stated, this is an ongoing process. The task force meets every month. And you can still provide input on how we allocate those dollars by visiting county.milwaukee.gov/ARPA.taskforce and submitting your feedback. Again, these meetings are public, so you can also join in. So register to attend and provide any commentary in person or over Teams. Okay, so just to talk a bit about our challenges. So our structural deficit, the pandemic and the resources we received from the federal government, such as CARES and ARPA dollars, have helped us a bit in meeting some of the needs and funding some of the gaps that were made due to interruptions by the pandemic. But even with no new spending, the cost to maintain current operations each year on average grows by 2.4%, while revenue only grows by 1%. Once those Arpa dollars are allocated, once CARES is all spent up, we are right back to square one. We have deferred maintenance issues, so that continues to be one of our biggest budgetary challenges, with hundreds of millions of dollars needed to repair or replace county amenities. And then those unfunded or underfunded state mandates. So the state of Wisconsin does not provide adequate funding for the services it requires Milwaukee County to provide by law. And over the last decade, Milwaukee County has received over $400 million less in shared revenue due to decisions by the state legislature. This is why we need dedicated local funding. So we are only able to raise revenue in very limited and specific ways, but we are seeking other forms of revenue raising structures through a sales tax, which I'll talk briefly about very soon. But why we need this dedicated local funding, it's because we want to provide property tax relief. Again, because we have limited ways to raise resources in Milwaukee County, one of those being through levying property taxes. Property taxes in Milwaukee County are among some of the highest in the country. We want to make sure that we can enhance the stability of former, current, and future county employees' pensions. Our labor force, our workforce is our greatest asset. These are all of you. You know, our staff and our workforce are members of our community. And we want to make sure that we can pay them well and that we can meet the obligations of the care that they need when they're no longer working for us. And we want to make sure that we maintain those critical services and assets for our residents. That first page, that government at a glance, every single one of those resources from our parks to our safety system to our culture institutions are all assets for our residents and help our residents live healthy, happy, sustainable lives. So this is the gap annually that we are seeing between our costs and our revenue. It feels insurmountable because it is. We want to maintain a budget for the next 20 years, but we'll have to cut by $23 million each year if we want to meet our burden, which is adopting, well, it's not a burden, but adopting a rounded budget. So we can't adopt a budget that exceeds our revenue. So without our solution to our funding challenges, we will be able to meet those current services. Without the solution, by 2027, Milwaukee County will have no local dollars to provide these local services to county residents. So when we're talking about local services, again, we're talking about parks. We're talking about bus routes and roads, our emergency systems, our museums, our senior services, our public safety, our disability services, our youth services. So just to give you another visual, our service results in a 2.4% annual increase in costs, but our revenue growth is only 1.1%. So again, we're able to levy property taxes. We're able to, for instance, the parks department has beer gardens and facility rentals. And then when you visit the courthouse and when you're accessing some of our services, sometimes you're paying fees and so on. That's how we raise revenue. But the result is it's not enough. And we have a projected $300 million annual deficit by 2036. So property tax is not enough. Vehicle registration fees and so on, not enough. State aids, those state mandated services that the state is not funding, not enough. But with the local sales tax option, which we are seeking, this will hopefully help us raise that revenue that we need. So just to talk a little bit about that sales tax, and so let me back up. A lack of revenue, and I'll share this quote, a lack of revenue is holding Milwaukee County back. We urgently need a permanent solution to this crisis, and we need the state legislature to work with us to move Milwaukee forward. That was by myself. So just to give you a small snapshot of our move for MKE, which was formerly of the Fair Deal, which was introduced and championed by former Chairperson Theo Lipscomb. It's a countywide coalition of local governments, business leaders, community leaders who recognize the problems are best solved with local solutions. So this coalition is supporting Milwaukee County in giving us the authority to implement a local option sales tax to provide property tax relief, reform local pensions, and preserve critical service and assets. Milwaukee County has one of the lowest sales tax in the nation. And by raising it by just 1%, we can raise those funding that we can raise the funding that we need to meet these services. And it will also preserve these critical services to allow us to attract the businesses and the people to be a globally competitive metro region that helps drive the state economy forward. As many of you know, we have something called brain drain. A lot of folks like me, a lot of young upcoming leaders, they leave Milwaukee because we aren't investing in it enough. And we really want to make sure that we can retain and also attract those folks that we need to take Milwaukee County into the future. If you support this option, if you want to be a part of helping us advance this, please go to www.moveformke.com/take-action. There's a petition located there that you can also sign. And we also encourage you to reach out to your state legislator and any others you feel compelled to, and let them know that you support this. I'll stop there because I want to make sure that we have time for questions. I see the chat going, but I'm not able to look yet. But I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. You can contact me anytime. My email is listed here is marcelia.nicholson@milwaukeecountywi.gov. My phone number, my office number is right there for you, 414-278-4261. And then you can reach my landing page and also get in touch with me through that landing page on www.milwaukee.gov/Nicholson. So I'll exit out here and then we can just go ahead and jump into any questions you might have.
Marcelia, the questions in the chat refer in part to, a large part to disability benefits. And are they included in the equity policy that you mentioned, and other things too, but we can start with that, I suppose.
Yes, so I see the questions. I'll start with question 1, which is, are there state and city version of the equity budget tool? Yes, there are. Milwaukee County shared that budget tool not only with the city of Milwaukee and other municipalities throughout the county, but also the state of Wisconsin. What I cannot tell you is if they are actually using it yet, but I do know it has been shared. The second question is, do we still need to advocate for a fair deal to get our equitable share of tax monies we collect? Thank you for that question. And you probably asked it before I got to that slide. So yes, we still very much need you to advocate for a fair deal, which is now Move For MKE. Why this is especially more important is because we did have a sponsor, Representative Dale Kuyanga, who, due to newly adopted maps, will not be coming back to the state legislature. And so we are seeking a sponsor. And we also need to, once they are back in session, advance this and prioritize this. And they won't be going back into session until January, unfortunately. So we really do need public pressure for our state legislature to see this as a priority. The third question being, are people with disabilities included in the equity policy? Yes. So our Office on African American Affairs has been renamed our Office on Equity. Our racial equity budget tool does get at different disparities. I will say intersectionality, which is looking at how disparities not only affect race, but also, gender and orientation and abilities is something that we're also very much leaning into at Milwaukee County. Question 4, when and why does Milwaukee County use consultants at a high level? That really depends. And that's a challenging question, mainly because we have so many various departments that do so many different things. We have different, committees and task force that sometimes rely on consultants for, various issues, whether it's are they an issue expert if someone wants to advance a particular policy, or for instance seeking grants. We are trying to incorporate a system where more of our workforce can be used, their skill sets can be used and tapped into as experts to, advance whatever we have to advance. But sometimes we do have to reach out to consultants. I don't have like a running list of every and when we have, but that's something I can certainly dig into. Reach out to my office if you're very interested in that, and I can get that information for you.
Okay, let me interrupt at this point. I don't see any hands raised, so those of you who are online on Zoom can click on the reactions at the bottom of the screen and raise your hand that way, and I'll recognize you. Oh, there's Dennis. He knows how to do it. And I'll get to him in a minute, but also say those of you who are here in the room in Max Otto Hall, if you want to ask a question, you will come over here to this seat and I'll give you my seat, and so you'll be on the screen here and you can ask your question. That's the procedure we'll use here. And I do have a question, but let me recognize Dennis first. Dennis, your question?
Yes, thank you very much for this encouraging presentation. Could you say a little more about the state laws restricting the ability to raise funds here in Milwaukee County?
Thank you, Dennis. So it's a multi-pronged answer. So one, again, being with Milwaukee County being the administrative arm of the state mandates that we provide certain services. However, they don't fund all the services that they mandate us to provide. So they say, okay, you have to do X. Well, we won't give you money to do it. But they only give us very limited options to raise revenue to fund those services. So for instance, we can levy property taxes, which is raise property taxes. We can raise vehicle registration fees. For instance, my first term as supervisor, we were debating a $60 increase in wheel tax. We had the public share overwhelmingly that they could not handle such an increase. And so we cut that increase in half to $30. That's the second option. The third option is through what we get from the state, shared revenue, but they don't provide enough in shared revenue. So those are the three options that we have. We don't have any other options. In fact, unless the state gives us permission to do so, we cannot do anything but those three to raise revenue. And so by seeking that 1% sales tax, we will those funds that we need. However, again, we have to get permission of the state. And as you know, the relationship between Milwaukee County and the state has not been very great. In fact, it's not improving. It has not improved, but through the work of county executive and I and folks at the table, the Move Milwaukee Forward deal, we're really working overtime to, just, revamp the reputation of Milwaukee County, work across aisles as best we can, and really, remain optimistic in advancing this work by, reaching out to people across the state, whether they're other legislators or supervisors or municipal leaders who can share that, Milwaukee County being the economic engine of the state, really needing this option to raise revenue to fund our services.
Okay, thank you. I raised my hand here, so I'll recognize myself and ask the question. One of your slides said $1.5 million in ARPA funds for what I think you called it a flexible housing fund. Can you say more about how that money is going to be spent? Is it going to be directly through county agencies or through nonprofits, or actually direct subsidies to builders, or how will that work?
So how it works was through with coordination with community advocates. So we provided stipends for people who were facing evictions, who weren't able to meet their rental obligations, and also for mortgage owners who weren't who maybe needed some economic support and relief and met a certain income threshold, and just needed additional dollars to help meet those payments as well. This is something that we have done during the pandemic, and hopefully we'll continue to invest in. Our housing department is working overtime in this regard. So again, in coordination with our housing department and with community advocates, we provided stipends for folks to meet their rental and mortgage obligations. But this is again a need that we see, especially as housing does not become, better to afford. It's just not happening. So we'll continue to invest in that area. But that's where we've allocated it so far.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of money, but it's not going to go very far in comparison to the need. So yeah, that's definitely a critical need, I would say.
I agree.
Okay. We have Joanne here, wants to ask a question. So Joanne, you can take over.
Take this, bitch. Okay. All right. Two questions, Marcella. One is, can you cut back on the funds that are supposed to go to various programs because of the shortness of revenue? Why should you be spending money that you don't have? And then the second one is, are you planning a way to publicize the need for the sales tax to go up?
Thank you so much for that question, Joanne. So, in terms of cutting back on programs, I think where we can cut back on is if we identify maybe an area where we're allocating where we're duplicating resources. But to be honest, there's no program that I feel comfortable cutting, and I think the community will mostly agree that the services we provide are very essential and important. There's not a lot that we're doing that we could cut back on. In fact, we've been making cuts, over the years, and we really can't afford to make any more because of the health of our community. The health of our community matters. I can't see myself cutting, aging and disability services or parks or our cultural amenities or our emergency services or public safety. There's so many areas that are critical and crucial to our communities. We just need access to a revenue structure that can meet these needs. If the state were providing us money for state mandated resources, we wouldn't be dealing with, the budget gaps. If the state was giving our due shared revenue, if they weren't sending $400 million less, not for any reason other than they just don't want to give it to us because they don't like us, that's just not something that I'm willing to accept. So, we'll continue again to seek this funding structure and other creative solutions to meet our needs. And then in terms of advertising our Fair Deal or Move Forward MKE, we will continue to. It's something that we have. During our budget season, various supervisors held, budget town halls. You'll see, ads in papers, but we'll continue to do more, especially as we solidify who our sponsors are and what that plan is, because for some time we were negotiating with the state legislature around what a potential bill will look like. Now that we have to seek a new sponsor, we have to go back to the table. So, once we figure all those details out, we'll definitely continue to advertise, but it's still on the table. The option is still on the table. So we still encourage you to reach out to your state legislators or leadership at the state and tell them that you support this option if you do.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Hello. My question is, there have been several county supervisors, where there have been additional candidates challenging, some incumbents. Can you tell us anything about where those challenges are coming from and what are the philosophies of those challengers? Is there a coordinated effort to take over the county board?
Thank you. Very good question, and I'll try to approach it carefully. So in terms of if there's a coordinated effort to take over the board, I can't speak to that. I'm not really sure who's coordinating what, but I can let you know who is up for election and who has a challenger. So District 3, Sheldon Wasserman. He is an incumbent supervisor, also a former state legislator. He is opposed. He won his primary and has a challenger on April 5th. So in terms of philosophy, we are nonpartisan, so we're not like Democrat versus Republican. But I would say Supervisor Wasserman he's our parks chair, and he has also been a very important voice on our health and human needs, our health equity and human needs strategic planning committee, as a doctor as well. I don't know a whole lot about his opponent. Another challenged district is, and you have to forgive me because we have new numbers, but Supervisor Willie Johnson, who is a longtime incumbent, is also being challenged by someone who I understand ran in a partisan race for county executive as a conservative. So that's all I know. Another challenged race is District 18. So District 18 is an open seat. The incumbent did not submit enough signatures to be named on the ballot, so he is advancing a write-in campaign. He has two opponents who are also advancing write-in campaigns, one of them being former Supervisor Deanna Alexander. And then the last contested race is, I believe, District, 14. No, we have two more contested races, one being District, I believe, 14. That is for an open seat. I believe the primary advancers are Juan Miguel Martinez and Josh Zepnick, who is former state legislator. And then the last contested race is the new District 15, incumbent Supervisor John Wyshawn and Peter Burgelis. So that is all I know. I don't want to get too much into philosophies because, again, it's a nonpartisan board, but I encourage you all to do some digging online, find out who those candidates are, and if you live in any of those districts, remember to vote on April 5th.
Okay, thank you.
BJ, I see your hand's up.
Thank you. Yes. And thank you so much for this lively and informative session, because I was just riveted. And I know most people would say, are you kidding? And I'm like, oh no, this really counts. Because I have been involved with the Wauwatosa Commission for Citizens with Disabilities, and I know one of the people on the county rolls and have learned a lot about government, and I am really concerned about the fair deal business. And I want to ask, I posted the webpage for the fair deal information in the chat. I strongly encourage all of you to look at that. And I want to be sure, is all of that information still current and valid?
I'm just taking a look now to make sure.
Okay.
And we typically do a really great job of keeping our website updated. So yes, go ahead and, yep, that's it. That's the petition there. And you can scroll down and see the history of how that was created and how the new county executive and I are working to advance that forward as well.
Oh,
Thank you
good.
so
Yeah.
much.
that I also attended an excellent presentation before COVID. There was, I guess, a county-wide road trip going on, and that was absolutely super. I'm thinking it would not be a bad idea to do that again and record one, because I think the message kind of got lost with all of COVID and everything. And I know with all the attendance I've been doing in for Wauwatosa Common Council and School Board is that we need money, we need money. And I said, and I finally spoke up and said, we're not getting what we deserve. So we need to be aware of that. And I just want to be sure I can use that as an educating point. And just one other quick question, is it still fair to say that Milwaukee County has increased our revenues that we send into the state since 2008, but they have not increased anything back to us?
That's exactly right.
That is so stinky.
That's exactly
she
right.
said politely. So thank you. I just wanted to be sure. And if you need anybody to help set something up in Wauwatosa, I'm going to be in touch anyway, and I'd be happy to help you do that, because I think that that's the biggest first priority that for me, and it is to get our fair share. Thank you so much.
That's exactly right. BJ, thank you so much. Please do be in touch. I would love to work with you. I love the idea of bringing back a county-wide road trip. I agree. The pandemic really did, it created a lot of challenges, but now that we see, some hope on the horizon, I think this is a great time to revamp that back up. And to your point, we are the economic engine of the state. Where we send $1, we sometimes get $0.25 back. Other counties, they put $0.25 in, they get $1 back. And so they're utilizing the resources that we're sending to the state to make surrounding counties better. But then we're not able to meet our obligations, and we really do deserve that money. Thank you so much, BJ.
Dot has a question in the chat, and then back to Dennis. Dot asks, how effective is mental health crisis intervention from your perspective?
Thank you. Great question. I'm not an expert on this area, so, I won't dig too deep into it. But I believe that mental health crisis intervention is important. We know that people with mental health issues need more resources and more supports than people who are more neurotypical. And we really want to make sure that, we're intervening and not preventing root causes, because mental health is, something that is just, it's in your brain, it's in your body. You can't prevent mental health issues, but you can, provide resources and services that help make them better. That give people access to the services that they need to be healthy, to give them, the skills that they need to cope, to help them be better, so they're not getting into trouble, so that they're not left to their own devices, so they're not alienated or alone. We can do this in diversion with, whether it's through crime, because people with mental health issues really should be treated, again, differently than people with a neurotypical, body. And, we should continue to, fund resources such as, housing, so that people aren't on the streets, healthcare, so that people can be healthy. So, that's about all I know, because, I believe in it from a values and a moral system. But if you want more information related to mental health specifically, get in touch with my office, and then I can get you in contact with someone who is an expert on this issue, and who can talk to you about exactly what we're doing and how effective that work is.
Yes, my question referred to facilities for crisis intervention. As we know, there was a bid out for private mental health hospitalization, crisis intervention, and there were no bids on it. Facilities did not want to take over. The current services of the county behavioral health facility But I thought I read in the newspaper recently that there has been some movement on various healthcare systems cooperating together to provide services at a 12th Street facility. And I believe that was just very recently a big article in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel about that county 12th Street facility right off the expressway system.
The Marcia P. Cogs.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to know, is that true that we're finally getting some cooperation on mental health interventions from the various private hospital systems?
Yes, that is true. And then also, if you missed it, I thank Governor Evers for also allocating some funding towards that issue as well. But again, I don't have all of that in front of me, and we're doing a lot every day. So if you want to have an in-depth conversation, you can definitely reach out to my office, and then we can continue to talk about it. Thank you so much.
Dennis, thanks for being patient.
Thank you. You talked about scarcity of resources, and in response to Bruce Wiggins' question, where there was 1.4 million, seemed like for important things like mortgage relief from the pandemic and so on. But I think I saw in your figures, you talked about $4 million for vaccine incentive pay for correction officers. Can you say something about that? I mean, aren't these guys getting vaccinated? Do you have to, how much are you paying them to get vaccinated? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, so yes, as you know, the pandemic was the vaccine and the pandemic was heavily politicized. And we wanted to make sure that not only our corrections officers were safe, but that our residents who are in our House of Corrections are safe as well. So we wanted to, make sure that we can incentivize that. And we're also incentivizing our youth in our correctional facilities for them to get vaccinated as well. And this was also thought in regards to the fact that some of our corrections officers are some of the lowest paid in the state. Surrounding counties actually pay their corrections officers more, even though some of our challenges are greater. So it was a deliberative decision to only make sure that, folks were safe during the pandemic, but that we could also meet, some of the wage obligations that folks need during the pandemic as well. To retain, rather, I should say.
Have a follow-up, Dennis? Does that?
Old hand or new hand?
Okay, yeah. So what kind of incentives are you talking about? How much, like so much if you get a shot or what?
And I don't have the figure in front of me, so I don't want to make up a number, but I can get that back to you. And we see this so much. So corrections officers, I can't remember if it was a one-time like pay or if it was an hour. It might have been an hourly increase, but I don't have that figure in front of me. I'm so sorry. We're taking up hundreds of files a cycle, so.
So to you, Dennis, as well as others on the call here, Bree Perez and Rob Hullum, the two people listed are Chairwoman Nicholson's staffers in the office. So if you have follow-up questions on that or anything else, there's Rob, we see. Just waved. If you reach out to Chairwoman Nicholson's office, it's probably Rob or Bree that you will get on the phone. So feel free to follow up with more specific questions if you have that. We are at the end of our hour here.
It went so fast.
And I think we can all agree, all thank Chairwoman Nicholson for her time. And I think we can all agree that it was pretty ludicrous to hear a proposal, I think it was 2 or 3 county executives ago, to eliminate Milwaukee County government. Pretty ludicrous when you hear all the things that our county government does. And so we thank you, Marcelia Nicholson, for your time. And we look forward to continuing to work with you and wish you luck and good health in your future for you and your family.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bruce and First Unitarian Society, for having me today. And thank you all for attending and asking such incredible questions. I look forward to continuing to advance the priorities you all care about.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, at this time, we will be ending the live stream.